So it is 2 o'clock. I'm sorry, 3 o'clock. I'm in another world. It's 3 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and Mr. Kimball is going to give us the invocation and the pledge.
Pray. Heavenly Father, God, we come to you. We thank you for this wonderful day that you've given us. God, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to meet and talk about the things that impact our community here. God, we just pray that you would give us wisdom as we discuss these things, God, and we just thank you in advance. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I want to first say welcome to Maurice. We're going to call him Joe Engel, and Claristi Shumo. And welcome. I'm glad you're here. I know we're going to enjoy having you both on our board. I'd also like to take 1 minute to allow someone to speak to you. It's with great sadness that I tell you we are going to lose one of our board members. She was originally put on the board by Miss Benson because she thought she was in her district. And she actually, I sit right on the district line of 1 and 5, and she actually is in District 1. So I got the opportunity to reappoint her. And she has been one of the best board members on this board. She is always willing to do anything to serve. She's always willing to step up to the plate. She has the best questions, and she also is out there telling people about the good things that ECUA does, and I just appreciate her in so many ways, Miss Deborah Ben.
Thank you. I wasn't sure who you were talking about there. Doesn't sound like me. But I just wanted to say it is with regret that I have to resign from the committee. It has certainly been a privilege and an honor to serve this committee. Appreciate everybody on the committee. I've met so many wonderful people and got to know so many people, and with the staff being so outstanding and an outstanding exemplary board that presides over the ECUA. I don't think it could be in better hands than it has been in the time I've been with serving on the committee. But unfortunately, my husband and I have sold our home, or fortunately, and we're going to be moving on to the next phase of our lives. We've been in RVing for a long time, and we plan to do some travels. In fact, I was supposed to actually be in South Florida this month, and had a change of plans at the last minute. Kind of regretting that weather-wise right now. But in the next phase of our lives, it's going to take us actually to another state when we decide to settle down again, just across the line in Alabama. We've purchased some property, and that's where we will be relocating to eventually and building a home there that will accommodate us and our RV all in one location. So it is with regret that I have to leave and resign from the committee, but just can't tell you all how much I appreciate all of you and all of the accomplishments that's taken place since I've been on this committee, starting with the relocation when I came in of the old stinky downtown to the new place, recycling, some of the big issues and I&I issues, and all of the courage and dedication and commitment that it's taken to make all those things happen is inspiring, and you'll always have a special place in my heart. Thank you.
Dr. Walker.
And how many years have you been on the committee, please?
Mrs. Benson, how long have you been?
I think since 2004. Yeah,
Yeah.
I appointed her.
I believe that's so. Yes, thank you again. And thank you, Ms. Campbell.
I'm not only losing a CAC member, I'm losing a neighbor, I'm losing just an absolutely wonderful, delightful lady. But I'm not very far in Perdido from Alabama, so I know you'll still come and see me. If I'd have known you were gonna leave CAC, I wouldn't have found you that realtor, though, I'm just saying. We move now to the adoption of the,
Ms.
oh, I'm
Campbell.
sorry, Ms. Benson.
Well, since she has served virtually the entire time that I have served, and actually, our history goes long before that. She and her husband have been wonderful campaign workers, and you might talk to her about that. But absolutely, I'm proud to have named her to this committee and proud of her service on this committee. And I will tell you that when you go to Alabama, we will still take your recycling, so. But Godspeed to you.
I did tell Ms. Campbell that I would be campaigning for her and the rest of the board. I've always made that up since I joined the committee, to not be actively involved in those campaigns for the board members. But certainly, I have no hesitation to do so for any of the board members.
We'll be getting your email address before you leave.
All right.
Okay, so we move now, thank you, to the adoption of the agenda. Do I have any add-ons, any questions? Mr. Perkins?
Move the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, I do want to add a couple of things under new business, updates on social media, good neighbors under new business, and customer service survey feedbacks. So if you'll take those.
So it's 3 separate items. Update,
Yes.
Update on social media, good neighbors.
And survey feedback, customer service. Wait, and I apologize, one last thing, cybersecurity. Audit. John walked in and reminded me. And that's it. They'll all 4 be quick, I promise.
I'll second the motion to adopt the amended agenda.
Thank you.
A motion for approval.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Please vote.
The system's a little confusing. Whichever one you press will fill in on the inside and let you know that you voted or not. It took me a while to get used to that.
I just had a question. I think it's a good item that we ought to approve. However, I'm just wondering, has anybody done any kind of a cost-benefit analysis to see about purchasing our own backup items to eventually not have to rent them
Thank you.
over a period of time?
Thank you, Joe.
I can't speak to a specific cost-benefit analysis. I will say we own and have a lot of this equipment. So this is when we've got everything that we've got occupied. So it steps in. Sometimes it's used for long-term projects, or not long-term, but I'll say something that might need to be in place for several weeks or so. I know that our construction and maintenance staff does look at the balance between owning and renting on a lot of things. With 400 lift stations, we can't have 400 emergency pumps, so we try to balance it.
Thank you, Ms. Benson.
Move the staff recommendation.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Did-
Christie?
I had a question for Betsy.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to know, what's the number of pumps that we have?
Mr. Johnson.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. Does anybody in the staff here have a rough idea? I'm going to guess between 100 and 200. Okay, they're not backing me up here, so I'll say.
Okay.
We can for sure find out the exact number. Ms. Ritz?
I was going to say
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
4.
Thank you, Ms. Ritz. Any further discussion?
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Mr. Kimball?
Have we, since they were the only bidder, I guess normally over the time you see business names that come over as, contractors, where I don't think I've recognized this one, so have we used them before? Do we know that they're gonna be a good contractor?
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, we have. Basically, as I understand it, these folks bought out Thompson pumps that we've used in the past. So yes, we've got experience with them, so.
And it passes 11-0. We move now to item G, replacement of AMR assemblies for water meters on page 15. Mr. Kimball?
I move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Do you have a second to get it on the board, and then we can discuss?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Ponson. All right, Ms. Benson.
So, my husband and I gave each other a new dishwasher for Christmas. Wasn't what I had in mind, but yeah. And the plumber came and had to turn off the water at the meter. And we had a terrible time finding this thing. We had to dig and locate and all of that. And I had had a previous incident where I had a water break. Is there anything that we can do to help citizens locate their water meter and have access to it? Because even when we found it, it was hard to open. It's just not very user-friendly. And, I'm usually there alone, and I'm not very coordinated at this sort of thing. Is there anything that can be done? And I would guess I would ask Mr. Johnson if
Yeah, good
that's
question. Mr.
appropriate.
Johnson?
Well, my first response is that I believe, according to code and good practice, that every house should have a shut-off valve beyond the meter to control the flow from that point into the house. Otherwise, your own valve, not using the water meter valve as the control for your before automatic meter reading, we had meter readers to go and visit every meter once a month, 12 months a year. They tended to be, for the meter readers at least, fairly easy to find and to get into the box, check the read and all that. Since automatic meter reading, we don't go back as often. Now, we have ever since we started automatic meter reading, been working to locate in a GPS system every meter that we can, take pictures, basically get dimensions that orient the location of the meter in relation to known things, and we're still working on getting the 120,000 meters that we have done. We've got a long way to go yet. So we're collecting some of that information, and that would or should be available through our GPS, through our GIS system for what we've done, but not for everybody yet.
And if I may continue,
Yes,
Ms.
please
Campbell,
do.
thank you, Ms.
Please do.
Johnson. You know, I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for a public information campaign to say, do you know where your shutoff valve is? And what would you do in the case of a water break? And this is what and maybe even something on our website, because I happen to have a plumber there that day, but if something happened and I were alone, who knows the damage that would happen to my house. So I would suggest that we do something, and I think it would be very valuable.
I see Jim looking at you right now saying, I could do an educational video on that. That would be good. I agree wholeheartedly. It's something we could share on social media and, educational at the same time. Very good. Mr. Ponson.
Forgot where I was. I had a question about the spending on this. Are we buying all of these now, or is this just permission to buy them as you need them?
Mr. Johnson.
This is to approve the balance of the budget. As far as delivery goes, I believe that they would probably be delivered in bulk.
So we're buying them for inventory.
Right.
So then my next question is the warranties. I know we've had discussion of warranties on these. Does warranty start when they get installed, or warranty start when we buy them?
Those are questions that I would have to verify on terms of delivery and on terms of warranty as well. I really don't know. 1,400 work orders a month, we're gonna go through them fairly quickly.
Yeah. And that code to have your own valve is relatively new. So depending on how old your house is, it may not have one, but new houses have them, but nobody knows where they are.
They're buried.
I'll call you, Mr. Johnson.
Can you come over tomorrow? No. Ms. Ritz.
Thank you. I'm listening to the conversation, and I thought back to when my husband designed and built our home, and I thought, well, he put in a shutoff valve onto our property, but he also showed me, how to manipulate it. So my other comment is a question. When I had inquired about how, if customers are notified of when their assembly water meter fails, I learned that no, they're not. And then when I heard Mr. Williams talk about how many meters there are, I thought, I'm kind of hesitant to ask this favor of ECUA. Couldn't you notify the customer when the assembly fails? But then when I heard the number, I thought I can see that would be an astronomical task for them to notify customers as the unit fails. But I don't know if there's a blue mark out on the street pavement. Was that put there by ECUA?
Mr.
To
Johnson.
notify that's where the meter is? It's on the county property.
blue marks are typically to mark underground water facilities. It could be a main, it could be a valve, it could be a service in some cases, yes. Typically, if you're trying to give notice to other contractors about where our lines are, and that includes services.
Okay, well, we've been there 52 years, and this blue mark that's about this long, maybe 4 inches long, appeared within recent weeks. And I thought, well, they're going around marking the water sources.
Typically, that is for a third-party contractor that's getting ready to do some work in the area so they can avoid hitting your line.
Ah, I see. Okay, well, maybe they're gonna pave the street.
Could be.
Thank you.
Ms. Schneider?
Hi, I have a two-part question. My first question is, does the remote reading cause overgrowth? My neighbor had a broken spigot in his backyard last week, and he was out at the road in the meter, and it was completely filled with dirt and debris where he couldn't even reach the little shut-off valve. And so I was wondering if, because it's being read remotely, is that causing vines and debris and everything? Whereas if a person was actually reading it each month, that would probably be pushed to the side when it was at a minimum. And then my second question is for cost-effective analysis on the AMRs versus the manually checking it. How much would the payroll be to hire people to actually go out and manually check every single one of them every month versus what we're spending on these AMRs?
Mr. Johnson?
I don't know if I can answer either of those directly. Certainly, if a meter is not visited on a regular basis, it may have a tendency to collect dirt and weeds or grime or things that get into the box. As long as we can read the meter and the customer is getting good service, it's not really an issue. Certainly, you know, if there's a need to get into it, our guys have to clean it out. You know, without speaking directly to cost, I can just say that adding personnel for that kind of work compared to automatic meter reading, it's a big difference. We went from, I'm thinking 18 meter readers?
21.
21,
21?
yes.
21 sounds good to me. Meter readers to basically, I think, two, 3? Okay, so 2 or 3 or maybe 4 meter readers to go drive around and collect that data. It's a big cost savings for us to go to automatic meter reading.
Thank you. Ms. Shomi? Shumo. I'm gonna get that right.
It's okay. So 2 questions. One, when the meter box has to be manually read, is at that time, since they're out there physically, do they leave a notice for the ratepayer to let them know that there was an issue that now has been fixed? Anything like that?
Well, typically, there's no need. Typically, if we know that the meter is failing, we'll begin estimated readings, okay, based on their usage pattern. And then when we get the new meter in, we can adjust for the actual number and correct that. And usually it's transparent to the customer. Otherwise, their bill's about the same, and we get the job done, and we all move on. So there's really little effect on the customer. There's no real reason to draw them into it unless there's a big problem that we're finding.
Okay, and I actually had a second part to that. So usually when there is an issue, how soon is the system aware that there's something wrong with the AMR? Is there
in terms of the automatic meter reading process and the how they are recognize a failure in the meter, I really don't know. I'd have to check on that and get back to you. I assume it's basically that the transmitter's not transmitting the information to the meter, so that there's probably no reading coming in, that kind of thing. So.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Ms. Schumo?
Yes, one last
Okay,
question.
no, that's
So-
fine.
So, since we are on an automated system, is there something in place where meters are inspected every so often, like yearly or bi-yearly or something, just to, to your point about the overgrowth and things like that could happen without an eye on it?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think there's a process like that right now.
Mr. Perkins?
How many meters do we have? How many of these type meters?
Oh, about 120,000.
And so we're replacing 4,000 of them here, and I suspect that, it seems like we bought these maybe 15 years ago or so, and so we're replacing 4,000 or so a year, or you know, renewing them and stuff, and I'm wondering, and I'm okay with this and doing these, but I'm wondering if it's not time to look system-wide at our meters and see if maybe there are smart meters out there that can go with our app, that have new warranty. I mean, at some point, you know, you have a 15 or 20-year-old car and it's no longer efficient and no longer reliable. It makes sense to replace the car. And so while I'm okay with doing these, I'm wondering if these meters may have reached their technological life, and if they may be obsolete, and we're replacing obsolete meters. So it might be worth having someone from staff analyze that and report back to us, because I'd hate to, you know, every year, and it's going to be that year, and we've been having problems with the estimated readings, so it's, you know, people are frustrated about it. I'm wondering if at some point we need to bite the bullet and just look at a meter replacement project like we did 15 years ago.
Mr. Johnson?
I do believe that, well, number one, technology has progressed in the last 15 years, and the replacements that we're getting are more robust or better than they were back when we began this project. We're doing about 1,400 work orders a month, so that's maybe 10,000 a year or so. Or 10 or 12,000 a year. So we're cycling about on a 10-year schedule, I guess, right now. Certainly, if new technology in meter reading comes along, and there will be new technology that will come along, we will seek it out, and if we see a great benefit to ECUA, we will definitely bring it to you.
Dr. Walker?
Three things, if I can remember them all. One, if we're repairing or replacing 1,400 a month, then that's about 17,000 a year, which is seems to me to be a pretty good number. Two, there's been a lot of questions and comments about the subject. We don't usually get this much conversation about a topic like this in the committee. Perhaps we should ask for staff for a presentation to tell us about the meters and how they work, and how we read them, and what happens when one goes bad, and so on and so forth. So I suggest to have a committee presentation by staff on this general subject, and it could include the discussion about replacement and so forth. My third comment is that we certainly don't want to try to replace 125,000 meters in one budget year. Number one, we couldn't afford it, and then number two, when it was time to replace them another 10 or 15 years down the road, we'd run into the same kind of problem that we had this past year with the garbage trucks, with sanitation trucks. where we replaced 60 or 80 trucks all at once several years ago, and now we're stuck with them all going bad, wearing out at the same time. So we want to phase it in if we do it, I think.
Thank you. Really great conversation. When Bill and I went through the agenda today, this was the one that we stopped on and asked the most questions. So I appreciate all the questions from the new members. I agree with Dr. Walker that maybe we should do a presentation on this issue as well as some other issues, since we do have so many new members this year.
Glad to do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so, and technology-wise, I agree, man, I got new golf clubs and I can hit it 20 yards longer. I hadn't had a new set in 15 years. And I know John is out there listening to us, because we do want to marry those to the apps on the phone, to be able to use them on the cell phone, so that'd be great. Thank you. I think we have a motion and a second to go ahead and go with this year, or for this time, but maybe look into something different in the future. Please vote. Move now to item H on page 18, which is the award of bid for annual service contract for access road construction, maintenance for lift station sites, and ECUA easements. And this is a base bid on 18 and the alternate bid, one bid on page 19. Mr. Johnson, you want to tell us a little bit more about this?
Certainly. As the item states, ECUA with almost 400 lift stations and countless feet and miles of easements to access our lines. We have the need all the time for services to clear trees and shrubs and stuff like that from these right-of-ways to give us access for our crews. This is basically establishing a unit price contract to request those services on a case-by-case basis. Our operating departments have budgets to be applied to these as needed. The unit price bids were to establish the unit prices for various work items for the contracts. The base bid was weighted so that bidders could not front load bid items that might be more likely to be used. The alternate bid gives us an opportunity to basically set the base bid prices aside, and when we know exactly what we want for, say, a big tree removal or something like that, we can just pull a price off of that list. There are about 36 or 7 items on the base bid, and I think another 17 items on the alternate bid. We think we've got reasonable prices, and we'd recommend approval.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Campbell?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Ben. Might be your last second. Any further questions? If not, please vote. And it passes 11-0. We move now to the informational reports found from page 22 through the end. Do we have any questions or comments on the informational reports? If not, we move to unfinished business. Any further unfinished business? Not, we move to new business. And I had a couple of things. We had a major outage in Beulah, District 1, this last week, and we were very quick to get updates out and put it on the website, and to have have everything put out that we were working on the issue so that people knew we were working on it, but we didn't follow up with, well, it's all done and, you know, everything's working fine. So I had called into Bill and got an update myself and shared it, because it was my district. But I just was wanting to talk about maybe on our, we do have a new social media site. We're not using it as, you know, we use it for that to get information out, but in the future, I'd like to talk about getting it, the updates, follow-up updates, so that people knew what was going on, because we got a lot of questions afterwards of where are we? Is there an update, you know? And so maybe just point some quick little, this is taken care of out there. And then the next thing was be good neighbors. I know we're looking on Godwin Lane at the transfer station, and I had gone out and talked to some of the neighbors out there, and one of the neighbors at the front on Pine Forest Road, there's a little pond in between those two roads, and there was like all kind of snakes coming out of the pond, and overgrown around the pond. And so I wanted to make sure, and Bill and I talked about it today, to make sure and get our landscape, or the folks that we just vote on to go around and take care of our lift station in different sites, our easements and what have you, to make sure that in those instances like Godwin Lane, that we're good neighbors. Because we're getting ready to ask you for even more at this same site. I want to be a good neighbor ahead of time. So, you know, that was just one thing I wanted to bring to the board's attention. And then my last question was customer service feedback. Do we have any feedbacks? And I hate that Gabe's not here, and we'll bring it up with Gabe, and Bill said he would check with him. But I notice a lot lately when I'm on a phone call with another industry that I get follow-up. I got one the other day from a bank, a federal credit union, and I was happy that they did, because I was in a hurry when I went in there. I was dealing with a mom and assisted living and power of attorneys and all this jazz, and I didn't have time to say, but the girl there was just fantastic. And so later on, I got a letter, and it asked me, you were in our office lately, and how was your visit? What happened? And I was so happy that I could write them a letter and tell them how great it was. I went to my dentist the other day, and I'll be doggone if I didn't get an email from United Healthcare or not Aetna. It was Aetna who handles our dental, and they called and asked me what I thought about Mike Papadilius. I want to take that email to him and say, you better behave, dude. No, seriously, though, I thought that was just so nice that they asked me. It made me feel good as a customer of these people. So I just wanted to know if there was something like that, and I'm glad John's in the audience, that we could work on to send out to the people that do business. When they call in, we know their number, we're recording their phone calls. There should be a way that we can ask them, how'd we do? And we may be already doing that, but as far as Bill and I knew, we weren't. So I'd just like to say I'd like to see if we could do that. There's nothing better. I found out in business a long time ago, the people that complain are your best customers. They're the ones that really like you and they want you to do better. It's when they quit complaining that you're not doing well at all. So I thought that might be a good thing. And I'm still glad you're sitting there, John, because we talked about a cybersecurity audit. Do you want to tell us? Do you want to? Okay. You know, the city, I don't know if everybody knows, the city's had a cybersecurity attack, and I've been talking about cybersecurity for the last few years here, and I talked to John again, so he's going to give us a little
If I can jump back to the previous question.
Yes, please do.
When customers hang up the phone, they get a call back from a survey system that we have, and it asks them some basic questions about the service that they received, and then we collect that data. Gabe and the staff, they analyze that, and they use that in their metrics for their performance management. So we're already doing that on the over the phone.
Were we doing incentive?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we know, Bill. Okay.
And
Thank
we
you.
just renewed that contract for another year, so we'll be doing it for another year.
Beautiful. Thank you, John.
Cybersecurity, yes. So the city, they got hacked, unfortunately, with a nasty ransomware attack. And one of the things that made this very different, and it was like, I think it was Boston or somewhere up there, it happened in a similar way. On top of encrypting all the data so that their systems became useless, and that's where they hold you ransom. You know, they say, well, pay me 10 million in Bitcoin and we'll give you the decryption keys and you can get your data back. On top of it, they first stole a bunch of data. And it's called exfiltration. They grab a bunch of data and they send it off site, and it takes months. The city was actually hacked back in September, and it took 3 months for that ransomware trigger to actually start and decrypting all the data. And by that time, there'd been a whole bunch of data stolen. So the hackers, when they asked for the ransom, you know, the city was already doing their repairs and their restores and getting their data back because they have backups and everything like that. So they weren't too concerned about that, but then the hackers goes, but we have all this data that we're going to make public. And, you know, part of our data is that we have people's information. We don't have social security numbers of our customers, for example. We have their name and address, you know, just regular stuff. But our employees, our employee database has all my information, social security number, birthday. I mean, you name all that stuff that somebody could use to steal my identity. So the employee data is the critical component in this. And in the city, that was exfiltrated. And so what they're going to do is they're going to offer a kind of monitoring service to make sure that your identity stays whole. If you do get hacked and stolen, then they'll help you and you've got to pay for it. And so that's how the city is dealing with it. At ECUA, you know, we take it pretty serious, and we do everything we can to make sure that everything is updated, everything is patched. We utilize a multi-layer backup system. We refer to it as a 3-2-1. All our data lives in 3 different places on 2 different mediums and an offline backup. We probably do overkill on the backups. But in the case when you have a ransomware, you're happy you have overkill on backups. The bad part about that is it costs time and effort and money to do those things because it's got to be maintained and data grows. And so if our data grows by 1 terabyte, I actually need 4 terabytes to, you know, keep the backup copies and everything. But it's the cost of, you know, doing digital business. 2 years ago, we had a cyber assessment done by Homeland Security. And they came out pretty favorable. They had a few minor findings that we were able to resolve in about a half an hour. Just some things that, you know, kind of slipped through the cracks. It wouldn't be anything that a hacker could take, you know, possession of our data over. But anyway, we're doing another one. So after the city thing, and I kind of panicked a little bit internally and go, I think I need another cyber assessment. So I contacted a local company in Pensacola, had a chat with them. We came up with a scope of work, and tomorrow we're having a kickoff meeting, and over the next couple of days, they'll be in here and they'll be doing, you know, poking holes in the firewalls. They're going to do a phishing attempt to send out some nasty emails and to all the staff, and maybe they'll fall for it and maybe they won't, you know, that kind of thing. And so it'll probably take a couple of weeks, and then they'll write us a report and give us our findings.
So that's not something that we had to have to put out to bid on? Or?
No. The price was reasonable, within reason, and under the bid price.
And the best company that we could get to do that?
I believe so. These are very experienced people. They worked for the Navy Cyber Intelligence something for like 25 years. Then they became civilians when they retired, and they worked at some high-level federal agencies in Washington, D.C. doing their cyber assessments. And he was a local Pensacola person, moved back to Pensacola, started this company, and so they're eager to gain business. And so I have a lot of trust and faith in that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I got that letter from the city. So they will pay for your, I forgot the name of the group.
LifeLock, I think it was.
LifeLock or something like that, yeah, LifeLock. So they'll pay for you to have LifeLock for a year, I guess. Do I have any questions on this? Mr. Ponce?
I have a comment. My company has been going through, we had a big cyber attack. We're a company of about 500 people, and I'd say 450 of us use laptops. And so since then, we've started using a company called Know Before to do education to the employees, and we have to take these little courses. They're fairly simple. They're not a big deal, but they seem to have, they've helped. We have a phishing button, and we're all kind of, I know I'm overdue. I got a thing the other day that said, and it looked like a phishing attempt to me. It was an email from HR that said, you helped us develop this new job description for your job. And I'm like, I didn't do that. Phishing. They go, Randy, it was right. You did. Yeah. But so I'm reporting stuff and it's phishing regularly. But it seems to be very easy on the employees and useful information.
Correct.
As you can imagine, in my business, it's rampant, you know, because we deal with so much money. So, and they change like one little letter in an email, you know, instead of ESClaw.com, it's ESCSlaw.com. And they get your picture and your signature, and it looks just like it's coming from you. So, and I just wanted to make sure that we were doing everything that we could do with the best companies available for us to do it with for cybersecurity. Most importantly for the employees, but you know, our
Absolutely.
customers as well. Thank you so much, John, for
You're very welcome.
answering all those questions.